Welcome to your weekly program, BelAhdan, a show with an accent for those without one. Finally, the end of Ramadan, 30 days of Christmas celebration, 18, 17 hours of fasting, day fasting, finally came to the end. The whole month just went so fast, vanished before our eyes. No more sitting at Marina tent in the evening, waiting for suhoor. It was a wonderful day, community celebrating and enjoying. And then came the Eid al-Fitr. And I heard the Muslims usually celebrate at Mall of America. And a lot of people go to Mall of America. But this year, there was a big boycott of going to Mall of America, kind of support to Black Lives Matters, especially the Somali community. Blacks is blacks, a huge conversion between the Somali community and black community, solidarity. It's about time. It was wonderful to see. As much as we enjoyed going to the Mall of America, I enjoyed not going this season. Countering Violent Extremism, this is a program was launched by Obama post 9/11. And this idea of bring law enforcement involved with the community was a pilot study done in 3 different cities. We have here Amber Michel, a graduate student at the University of Minnesota. She's done a very interesting study about that impact, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the implication. Welcome to BelAhdan, Amber. That's a very interesting study, but the way it was done. How do you do such a study? And you measure its impact on community, national, and local and national organization?
Sure. So it's a little bit difficult because when you want to talk to the Muslim community about a program that addresses national security and terrorism, they are understandably very nervous and they don't want to talk about it. And so how I started was I started looking just at the kind of narrative that Muslim and Islamic organizations in the U.S. are putting out, their public narrative, the things that they say about countering violent extremism programs, the kind of things that they say about the government or intelligence bodies that administer those programs, just to start to get a feel for the language they're using. So the things I looked for in their statements and in the like press release, on their websites, this kind of public thing they're putting out. I looked for things like when they talk about that America's the best place in the world to be a Muslim, or that nothing is more important to them as an organization than fighting terrorism, or and there's nothing wrong with these statements, but to have that be like the primary focus of an Islamic organization, it seems unusual in comparison to so say there's a Christian organization, go to their website, you're not going to see that their #1 concern is that it's the best place in the world to be a Christian and that their #1 priority is fighting terrorism. So
where is this coming from? Is this something like intimidation, that people are afraid and people they have to prove themselves, they are patriotic, they are Americans?
Well, so there's a lot of pressure, right? Like I don't think that's something that needed to be confirmed by research. I think that all Muslims in America feel some level of pressure to do that kind of performance. But what I wanted to see was basically what you're asking, what is the meaning behind it? So is that how these organizations really feel, and is this really their main goal and the priority of their work?
The vision,
or is this
mission statement?
Right, or is this a narrative that is necessary to present so that genuine work can continue?
I see.
And how does that kind of national organization narrative differ from what local organizations and local Muslims who are directly impacted by a program like CVE, how does that differ?
So what did you find? How is it different from national and local?
Yeah. So some things that I said, in more than half of all of the national organizations that I looked at, I believe it was maybe 60% or so, exhibited these indicators of this excessive profession of national American identity.
Confection.
Right. And but whereas from local organizations and the local Muslim population that I've talked to, it's very different. It's probably exactly the reverse. And my suspicion is kind of one of two things, and I'm just not to that point in my research yet, but my guess is that when you're a national organization trying to get national acceptance by the mainstream, right? There's some level of that kind of pandering to the dominant message that you have to do. Mm-hmm. I think when you're a local organization, it's the absolute opposite. Yeah. In fact, to get legitimacy and credibility with the people who are impacted by these programs, you better not say those kind of things.
I see.
Because then you lose your legitimacy with the people who are suffering the real everyday impact of living under a surveillance microscope.
I see.
Yeah.
So, you know, as we always say, is all local, all politics are local. But, you know, it's like the, you know, running for general election. You know, at the end, you have a wider audience. You need to, you know, kind of have a different message than the primary. But when we talk about the people who are pondering to nationalism and patriotism, even if they are not really into politics or social organization and all of that, how much the money issue? I know most of these organizations are underfunded and they need money.
Yes.
Is this a factor that people are also screaming for, I'm here, fund me, I need something like that?
I think absolutely, because there was a fantastic ACLU report called Blocking Faith, Freezing Charity. It's widely available online, Blocking Faith, Freezing Charity. And the ACLU looked at what happens to an organization's financial status if there's some kind of claim of affiliation with terrorism of some kind. Whether or not it's true,
yeah, well,
it
not
doesn't matter.
Terrorism, but,
right.
but anti, you know, establishment
sure.
or
yes.
kind of
anything.
different views.
Anything that is considered a subversion of the dominant.
Like our show, when don't get any funding.
right, exactly. Right, this is where you live. Right.
To get some funding is just can't do it.
So, but that ACLU study very clearly documents case after case after case where, for example, one mosque was running a food shelf, and there was an investigation on one member of that mosque for alleged ties to terrorism. No, it was never found to be true, but the mosque was so frightened that they couldn't have any affiliation, so they ended up having to shut down the food shelf program. And you know, funding, donors get scared because of the
association.
You're right, the providing material support to terror. You know, that is scary for people. So then people start getting very frightened with their. I just held an event a week ago with some other folks for Syria, and leading up to it, I talked to people about what do you want to do, how do you want to get involved, and people were terrified to give money because they're so fearful of the laws in our country that are turning everything everyone does into support for terrorism.
Isn't that also hurtful of some of this organization that genuinely really trying to help the community, like here in the Somali community? There's some good ones that really actually try to help the community. Now they've been stigmatized by working with law enforcement, its State Department, and people also start kind of wondering about this organization, what their vision, what they're coming from. So what's the impact on our local charity and social organization, mosque, or the social organization?
So when a program like CVE comes into the community, it's very polarizing. So there are certain individuals or organizations that are working with the FBI and with the federal prosecutor's office, and then there's everyone else. And so it creates a deep division. So there's disunity, and it's destabilizing to the community, and then there's a real impact for them. There's a financial impact. I know there are a couple of imams locally who have been very vocal against CVE, have also not been allowed to visit the 4 young Somali men who are in jail right now. The imams who have been on board with CVE and in support of it have been allowed to see these young men.
Appalling.
So it's almost impossible for me to state, just in the course of this brief interview, how on every level Muslim lives in the Twin Cities are impacted by CVE.
You know, I know it's easy to go after organizations. They are there and try to target them and, you know, kind of accuse them of all sorts of stuff. But going after the real terrorists is hard work.
Right.
And it seems like law enforcement choose the first one that just go after the obvious, the easy. But I think at the end of the day, that's misleading and it could be hurtful, and the real terrorist is out there.
I think that's a great point because, you know, we've invited Mike Brennan, former FBI agent who does work with the Brennan Center for Justice. All of his articles, I encourage people to check him out, Mike German. He writes on that, we are less safe, we're doing more damage by sometimes generating terrorism suspects or by going after that low-hanging fruit. We're ignoring empirical evidence, research that shows there is no predictable path to radicalization.
To build on it a program.
Right. So the CVE framework is that everybody follows these certain steps to radicalization or to engaging in terrorism. And if we can just spot them in these early stages, they'll never get to this end, which it's difficult to refute that in the public arena because that makes sense to people, except for the 2008 UK study that shows there is no identifiable path. People participate in all kinds of things for all different kinds of reasons.
Predicting crimes or predicting alcoholism or predicting people who are going to rob a bank or kill.
That's exactly what it is. And when I challenged the head of the FBI here in Minnesota, and I said, what body of evidence or research are you using to persist on this path of finding them before they commit a crime? And he said to me, I don't need any research. I can see it. We see what they do, and then we see their connections.
But it has failed in some other area, and in Europe and England, and just did away with it. So why this is not even an evidence to support it the other way?
Yeah.
If he's not using evidence to support his model, there is evidence to counter his model. Or is that
That's true. But there's an entire infrastructure and business, and there's so much built on following this pre-crime
follow the money kind of a deal.
People should question anytime the federal prosecutor's office is presenting themselves as a social services provider. I think that people have enough common sense to recognize that if the FBI is involved and the federal prosecutor's office is involved, their main concern is not making sure kids have scholarships. I don't think anyone should have any doubt about the fact that it's just an in. It's just a way into the community to make statements that you're going to provide these services or that you're going to connect people to organizations that will provide these services because it warms the community to you and it allows you to get that human intelligence. I mean, that's the number one thing the FBI relies on is that human intelligence factor. They need the community to be open to their presence or they can't get it.
But they end up using like shady informants.
Absolutely.
People are not has any credibility in the community.
Absolutely.
So how do they gather information? Most of this information are questionable.
From my point of view and from your point of view, yeah. From their point of view, it's solid evidence.
And that keeps the funding. Also appreciate your research, Amber Michel, a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, doing a study about the impact of CVE on Muslim community and the organization, and you'll see her result this fall, and we'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum, and God bless you all.